Hey everyone, it's finally here, the Isekai DnD recap. Don't know what that is? Well, it's an isekai story where 4 dudes from different points in time are transported into an unknown fantasy land by the name of Vestoria. This is all in the form of a Dungeons & Dragons campaign hosted by Rustage and played by Briggs as Norman, Teching 101 as Old Tony, Daniel Greene as the Shark, and Schwabity as Cody. Same thing goes as the One Piece D&D recaps, this will just be that, a recap. I will only, if at all, briefly mention a character's motivations and or backstory, as I'm assuming you already know who they are. Please don't use this as a replacement for watching this absolutely hilarious and well thought out campaign. One more thing, this is only part 1 and we won't be reaching the present storyline in this video. Only to the end of episode 27. Why? Because I want to make this a 2 or 3 part series like the One Piece D&D videos. Not to mention, I promised this video a long time ago, and I'm already way behind. Anyway, with all that's out of the way, let's go! The group awakens inside of a cave, soon realizing they've been summoned by the panicking prince in front of them, who was spouting words exclaiming the king is in trouble and he requires their help to save him, before being shot and killed by assassins in skull masks. The group murders the men before realizing they're all carrying necklaces with different symbols on each of them. Venturing outside, they found themselves in the midst of a dense giant mushroom forest. Guided by smoke, they arrived at a campfire where a couple of noblins were indulging in dinner. Learning the 2 monsters had been outcast from the nearby town Mushwick, the group soon bid farewell to the friendly creatures and journeyed into the town. Here, they entered the tavern, robbed the owner, and learned of the mayor who they left to find. Setting foot in his office, the band meet Mayor Delwyn, who sends them on a quest to take care of some bandits who'd been harassing the townsfolk lately. The party follow their newly marked map and arrive at a campsite not resembling of bandits at all. Children playing, people merrymaking, but most importantly of all, meetings and discussions were in motion. One of these men was an avian, Broken Wing, the other Benson Bell, who they reveal themselves to. Broken Wing enlightens the group that the mayor was spouting falsities. Everyone in this camp hasn't killed anyone and were forced out of town in the fear of the mayor's corrupted tyrannical ruling of Mushwick, who killed anyone that disagreed with his ways. Their new allies agreed to join them onward to Dalewyn's office to oust the mayor and defeat his Holgard bodyguard. They accomplished the latter, but the mayor had sadly escaped during the combat. On the other hand, Benson instituted himself as the new mayor, decreeing the noblins from earlier could return safely now. Broken Wing volunteered to show the party to the Paladin symbol's matching shrine, but on the way there they heard a distressed call for help. Through the trees, there was a beaten and bruised William Shakespeare grasping a baby within his arms, being held up by a pink-skinned Sulcan woman we later learned to be called Katsia. Upon seeing the group, she drops the author and dashes into the woods, before calling upon and sending a mythical beast, an owlbear, to attack the party. With some difficulty, the animal was, to Cody's dismay, slain. After the battle, they learn William was summoned here with the baby in his arms, but is unfortunately out of milk. So the next morning, Cody begrudgingly transforms into a female cow and the shark milks him. Wonderful. The next day, their trek reaches a finale as they arrive at the avian's territory atop the peaks, meeting Broken Wing's sister, Little Feather, who soon develops a crush on Cody. They stay the nights at the roost, and in the morning, the avians fly the adventurers to the nearby Paladin shrine. Here, Tony meets Palladium, one of the 12 gods who'd been sealed away over 1,000 years ago. The god informs them that if they desire to escape Vestoria and return home, they'll have to light all 12 shrines, one of which, the Warlock Shrine, has already been lit. So only 10 remain now. Once this task is complete, the gods will be revived at the center of the world and will grant the party any wish they desire. Palladium possesses Tony's phone, and the old man begins explaining what the hell just happened inside of his mind, but didn't get far, because he was soon interrupted by Katya atop her griffin. After the scuffle, followed by a thorough interrogation, they discover she's a mercenary sent to kill anyone with necklaces like theirs. The man who offered this job is called Wellington, and her direct contact for the mission is a man by the name of Skendor, in a nearby city, Englehart. Afterward, they let the Sulcan be on her way. The avians at last picked them back up and returned to the peaks. But to Broken Wing's worry, Little Feather had joined the party, though Cody did make sure to promise her older brother to keep her safe. A day's travel later and they arrive at Engelhart, and Dalewyn, who just so happens to be the mayor of Englehart's son, is there to greet them with an entrapment of Vestoria's guards. But before any combat was initiated, Leonardo da Vinci pops his head from beyond the battlements and halts the guards, exclaiming anyone with those necklaces are under the king's protection. Da Vinci led the six to Mayor Chudwell's office, where Da Vinci happily discussed with them the other holy sites he and the king have discovered thus far. One of them is in the capital with the symbol of a bow and arrow, another on an island in the northeast in Hulgardian territory, and one more in the southern swamplands. Which one do they choose? Trick question, none. Instead, they established the otherworldly brewery over the next month for a continued revenue stream to pay for the escalating adventuring costs. During Norman's advertising campaign, a purple-haired woman approaches him and takes note of the brewery, and would later arrive for opening day with some curious questions for Cody and Norman about where and when they're headed out next. The opening day was relatively successful, but now the crew had to finally ask themselves which holy site to visit, and after a small debate, they decided on the southern swamp. Cody made the decision to leave Little Feather behind because it would be dangerous, so she stayed at the brewery for the time being. Before leaving, they visited Skendor, who warned them of the fingers of the divine, Vestoria's strongest assassins, who Wellington may send if they aren't killed soon. Then, upon being asked, the broker nonchalantly gives them Wellington's address. Unfortunately, Wellington was not home, so they traveled onward to the swamp. Before arriving, they came across the traveling ice cream merchant, Gnilk Snobbleglork. Snobbleglork? Cody ends up tripping balls from it for a few minutes, so Shark waterboards Gnilk in the melted dessert, and the small human drowns. Okay, moving on, they follow a path of blood into the heart of the swamp, eventually arriving at a clearing where a party containing straw men with pumpkin heads, barrels, and the like was underway. In the center was one of Da Vinci's scouts, scared for his life. Upon suggesting they leave, the music immediately comes to a halt, and the pumpkin people begin encircling the six. Because of the absence of snake women, Norman immediately earth tremors in annoyance, and the battle commences. They mopped the floor with these spirits, and the scout ran off to report back to Da Vinci, before informing them where the holy site in the forest is. Arriving at the giant tree, Cody was about to insert his pendant into the shrine, but before he could, the tree gained autonomy and attacked the party for daring to touch its branches. During the battle, Cody climbed the tree and finally touched his pendant against the holy sites and met Drew, who now resides in Cody's Walkman and granted him the power of monkey. Oh yeah, and shortly after, William Shakespeare literally dies, and the shark continues to use his body as an improvised weapon for the remainder of the battle, mangling the once was corpse of the great poet, causing hatred and disappointment in the shark to flow through the other members of the party. Anyway, Cody deals the final blow and obliterates this tree, and they attend a makeshift funeral for Will and take a long rest in the swamp for the night. It was a quiet morning, one of the party's lowest moments, but after some time, the crew somberly head back to Engelhart. Hours later, with the town finally in view, smoke could be seen billowing over the walls, coming directly from the direction of the brewery. Suddenly, panic erupted amongst the group, and everyone dashed in to rescue, mainly Little Feather and Baby Shark, led by Cody. In a flame-engulfed back room, Little Feather could be seen tied to a chair behind a barricaded doorway, so Cody transforms into a bear, rips through the barricade, and tears apart the rope. Upon exiting, Little Feather informed them all of this was Valletta's doing, and they read a note she'd been left with exclaiming she doesn't like to be lied to. Oh yeah, Norman gave her the wrong directions earlier, and she demanded they come to the vineyard if they desire the baby's safety. So they marched onward, eventually reaching Valletta, along with her goons Yaroslav and Brick. Throughout the battle, they learned Valletta is working under a brewery owner named Hops, who essentially has a monopoly on all breweries in the country, and she was sent to sabotage our party on their behalf. The battle for the baby was waged, with the otherworldly brewery eventually overcoming the most powerful threat they'd endured yet, leaving Valletta and Yaroslav dead and Brick confused and depressed. Through Brick, they learn his dad is an abusive parent, forcing him to fight for the sake of his business. So they have Brick lead him to his father for a stern talking to. After a day's travel, they pause their quest and rest up in an abandoned town, or so it seemed. In reality, this was a town of animate objects. Chairs, barrels, flagons, any normally inanimate object really was talking and moving on their own. A lot of people were theorizing this town is the result of an Isekai Verona's awakened devil fruit from One Piece DnD, and I am absolutely headcanoning that right now because that is an awesome idea. Anyway, they stay the night, stop at Denny's for breakfast, and continue their trek, now venturing upwards into the mountainous terrain, until eventually arriving at the coal mining city of Stagfirth. So they continue their march until reaching Hops' office. Upon reaching the brewery, Little Feather carried Baby Shark off to a safer place, before the rest of the party met with the guard, Rippa. Anyway, they eventually reach Hops, a ginger-mustached man in a suit. But their threats to the CEO didn't last long before Blackbeard bursted through the door, unveiling the fact that him and Hops had a scheduled business deal today. And if he is required to defeat these 4 individuals to make that happen, then he gladly will. The battle began, but shortly after, Hops scurried off into his bedroom to seemingly hide. Blackbeard realized what the coward did, and they all called a truce for the time being. Cody investigates Hops' room, but only finds a skin suit splayed out on the floor. Before long, they discovered a manhole heading into the sewers. Venturing further in, they're eventually met with a clearing, with an almost dilapidated city lit by lanterns of blue flame before their eyes. The denizens of the city were called Scrats, humanoid rat-like beings of slightly smaller stature than humans. The gang ask around and soon realize there's a skin suit shop nearby. So they visit there and return the skin suit to Ratrick while they wait inside the nearby Ratatouille and have their first actual good meal in anticipation for the real Hops to show his face. Unfortunately, Hops never shows up to reclaim his skin suit. But they do see Ratrick close up shop, and it seemed as if he was on his way to Hops' house, but decides it's too much work and just throws it. He just throws it away, as well as a note with his address. So they pick up the notes and follow the trail back to Hops's, or should I say Ratdan's manor. Once reaching their destination, the group realized a party was underway in the Scrat's abode. To lure him out, the shark yells this:
Ratdan, I'll shoot you in the face, you rat bastard!
And Ratdan along with Ratatata emerge from the crowd to defend themselves. Ratatata is murdered during the battle, and Ratdan survives, where he's soon interrogated until proven useless, upon which his life is discarded. They search the house for money, which isn't at all hard to find, 10,412 gold pieces, and before long head to sleep in Ratdan's mansion. Douglas, a Scrat Norman befriended during the battle, agreed to replace Hops for the time being, so he can at least will Hops' brewery over to the party's ownership. At last, ascending the ladder and reappearing inside of his office, Brick and Hops, Douglas, hug and have a very emotional moment. At least Brick does. With Rippa overlooking the contract, the deed is done and the party have now successfully transferred ownership to themselves. Blackbeard then left their group and sailed off, hoping to reunite with his once-was crew. In any case, they returned to Little Feather, and when they did, she happened to be in mid-conversation with Wellington. The skeleton had assumed since they killed William Shakespeare that he'd be willing to work together with him against DaVinci to put a stop to anyone attempting to light the beacons. Why? Because Wellington continued, dropping the absolute bombshell that if the towers are all lit, there will be world-ending catastrophic consequences. Old Tony and Cody, in spite of this revelation, stayed true to their emotions to go home to their families, amalgamating in Mr. Wellington's rage-filled exit. In hopes of discovering the next holy site, they venture further north into Holgard territory. A few days later, now in a far more frigid climate, they arrived at the Holgardian border, where they were halted by Yogg, who informed them the town ahead was locked down because of a wild beast terrorizing the community during the night. Through some obvious cues, the party realizes Yogg is that beast, and decide to tie him up until the night, where they murder the Holgard in his transformed state. While the other party members are distracted by a lookout, Cody secretly revives Yogg and demands he run as far as he can away from here. While that was happening, the rest of the crew shot the lookout and stopped his retreats into the town. He was going to inform the citizens of the false narrative that our kind otherworldly brewers are the beast. Once he had fallen down, they healed his wounds and explained everything to him. And that got them on the conversation of funerals, and what their customs were in Holgard culture. Turns out there's a balloon man who supplies them with the colorful rising spheres, to which they attach their fallen brethren to and thus ascend into the sky with a tear-filled goodbye. Anyway, ignoring that for now, they head into the Nordic-themed town. Mainly the scout, but also the rest of the party, besides Cody, believed Yogg the beast to be dead, soon discovering a door the Holgards are unable to pass through, only because of their severe lack of intelligence. The group carries a nearby orb into the orb-shaped hole in the wall and make their way through into an icy corridor. At the end of the passageway is a spacious area with the desired shrine they're looking for. One caveat though. A frost dragon was sleeping atop the tower. The worst part is the symbol the site represented was covered by its tail. Cody called upon Drew about what to do, whom absolutely assaulted Cody with a Dragon D's nuts joke. Upon returning to reality, Tony asked his companion what Drew said about the dragon, to which Cody murders Tony with another Dragon These Nuts joke. Importantly, very loudly. This obviously wakes the dragon up, forcing them into their fiercest battle yet. One near-death experience from old Tony later, and they investigate the shrine to discover the symbol of a club is engraved on its surface. They end the night in a snooze and sleep till morning in the icy cavern. Waking up, they were greeted by the Frozen, icy creatures who now worship them for slaying the dragon. Pushing them to work, the party decided on hiring them to construct the Ice Bar, a northern branch of the otherworldly brewery. Once that morning activity had been fulfilled, they exit the cave and join the newly begun party hosted by Balloon Man. The Mickey Mouse sound-alike informs them he has in fact seen another person with a necklace like theirs, that person being their king, Julius Caesar. Later that day, with a generous sum of 1,000 gold pieces, Balloon Man agreed to take them across the sea to the other continent, where Julius is residing. Whilst sailing, Norman fished up a kraken, which Cody and Tony dealt with using Eel Team 6 and Elkfarv. 2 days passed, but eventually they arrived at the Nordic-inspired city's harbor, Port Dawn. Here they grabbed some fur coats for the colder climates, but after Cody requests something vegan from the shopkeep, the hull guard laughs in his face, exclaiming he's just like Gumpy, soon gathering other hull guards who also erupt in a mocking laughter. So they travel west to the outskirts of town to visit Gumpy's Shape Emporium for Cody's sake. At the Emporium, they end up inviting Gumpy to visit the Emperor with them, and soon regroup with Balloon Man to lead them to the capital, Big Crack. Traversing the terrain of the altitude-increasing mountain pass, they eventually arrive at the Roman-looking city built into the side of the mountain. After venturing through Big Crack, they soon came face to face with a jacked Julius Caesar. During their talk with the Emperor, out of nowhere, the shapes they'd purchased from Gumpy earlier all explode. After that, Gumpy put a cube onto his head, which I'll probably have shown anyway, but don't mind that, and a necklace with a thumb pendant attached to it. He reveals he's one of the fingers hired by Wellington to take down Julius, and now the rest of them by collateral. With help from Julius, they do eventually take Gumpy down, and then come to an agreement with Caesar. If they help him take over Vestoria in an upcoming assault he's planning, he'll light the Barbarian Tower for them. So for the next day, the troops convene at the outskirts of Big Crack, and further march onward and sail over the sea. Here they take a quick stop at the Ice Cave, where they see their ice bar completed. Julius Caesar lights his beacon and walks away to regroup with his men for the attack. Our party, along with Octavius, or should I say his real name, Brute, decide to race Julius Caesar to the capital to warn the Vestorians of the oncoming attack, rather than Caesar's original plan. This included attacking the smaller towns and cities en route so the capital would send backup, making it so that when Caesar arrived at the capital himself, the defenses would be weakened. So they continued their dash. Finally, meeting with George Washington at the capital, they convinced the president to assist them in taking down Julius Caesar. But once reuniting with Da Vinci, the painter drops the bombshell that Genghis Khan is also approaching the capital with an army of Sulcan. After a couple hours of preparation, a giant Julius Caesar was soon approaching from the sea. Attack on Titan style with his Hull Guard army. With an absolutely insane hold person cast by old Tony, the giant is defeated with ease. At the moment of his defeat, the crew then take on the impending threats of Genghis Khan, who is also dealt with quite easily with the fire from the shark's Molotov cocktail burning him dead. After those two legendary figures were eliminated, as Genghis Khan's necklace begins to raise off his body, a being of cloth snatched the necklace mid-air, continuing the combat. She did summon a few different elementals to attack them, but the abundance of enemies eventually overwhelmed her. Oh yeah, and the shark was doing his own thing. Anyway, with the necklace, Norman isekais Boudica into Vestoria, who stormed off as soon as she was brought here. To make it so Wellington's assassins stop harassing them, they decided to attempt a heist on Wellington's base and hopefully halt his flow of seemingly endless cash. Before that, though, a talk with the king is of utmost importance for a reward. On their way, they passed by the fountain, which will eventually take them home. Here, they could see Blackbeard actually lit his tower already somewhere else in the world. Oh, they also realized Baby Shark is nowhere to be seen. So the group asked if the nearby guards had seen the baby around, to which they learned these guys were supposed to be watching the baby, but took their eyes off him for a second, and the next thing they knew, he had disappeared. They quickly picked up their mostly useless rewards from Leonardo and trekked their way back to Stagforth for a questioning of Ripa. Here, they came up with the idea of visiting the bank. An accountant at the bank let them know of Torque's existence, a man who set up an account already under Wellington's name. Of course, only after the shark forfeited a quarter of the otherworldly brewery stocks. Reaching Torque's house, they somehow aid him in reaching an epiphany, and in doing so, he informs them Wellington's main base of operations, that being where he keeps his money, is the heart of the Scorch Lands, in the depths of a volcano. Important note, nobody aside from himself is able to survive in these elements. So they too could survive these elements. The party begins scouring Stagfirth for any individual who looks like they could assist them in traversing these barren lands. Sticking out like a sore thumb is a member of the Gas Mask Gang. Learning from Bartholomew here that to become a member of this prestigious group, they would have to talk to their leader. So they were led outside the city to a nearby church, where none other than Jesus smoking a blunt was awaiting them. Oh, Rustage, I love you. Jesus dawned on them their new gas masks. So, with one step out of the way, they stopped by Ripa's office to request him to commission some heat-resistant suits. During the wait for those to be created, they celebrated Ripa's birthday. And with that completed, at last, they prepared for entrance into the Scorch Lands. Hours of travel through the wasteland eventually led them to a molten moat, surrounding another holy site, this time the sharks. As a precaution, old Tony chucked a rock inside of the lava, and he soon figured out that caution was warranted. A giant creature of black coal and magma resembling an axolotl emerged from the fiery sea to challenge our party of adventurers. But this was not your average battle for the four. Near the end of the fight, old Tony would unfortunately perish by the indifference of the wild creature, embracing the deathly wave of magma as his life flashed before his eyes. The humble janitor never able to return home to his wife. Cody collapsed to the floor in agony, and a now broken man let out a cry of utter rage and desired nothing more than the death of this beast. As he cast the necrotic wither and bloom spell, killing the axolotl, leaving Cody sobbing on the ground, much alike the other party members. Even the shark knelt down and paid his respects to his fallen comrade. They take their time to grieve old Tony's death, but soon continue what they started and awaken Shark's god. Anyway, a humanoid fire newt shyly approached them, to whom they befriended, and he led them to their village where they were hoping to achieve a long rest. As they were communing with the lizardmen, a man in crimson armor flew down from the direction of the nearby volcano. As the mysterious figure landed, all the fire newts got on their knees and bowed down. Then, as his visor retracted, the man known as Anthony unveiled himself. Here he would reveal he was sent here by Wellington to investigate, as well as the fact that he was, in fact, old Tony's grandson from the year 2050, isekai'd here by a replica of the pendants created by Wellington himself. After conversing, they decide to have Anthony lead them to Wellington's base. Finally, reconvening with the skeleton now revealed to be Jack the Ripper, an absolute ton of misunderstandings were cleared up here. 1. The reason William Shakespeare spawned into this world with the baby staring back at him was because that baby, the one we know as Finn or Baby Shark, is actually the second prince. Why were these princes in the forest though? Well, that brings us to number 2. Around 1,000 years ago, once Wellington sealed away the gods, he collected all 12 necklaces and left them for safekeeping with Vestoria's royalty. Wellington believes the reason for DaVinci's recent summon was because a servant, a maid or a butler perhaps, unleashing a domino effect of the current circumstance, leading into number 3. DaVinci had eventually secretly overthrew and killed the king, and in doing so had driven out the remaining royalty, that being the eldest prince and his brother, whom escaped with number 4, the necklaces that summoned our party before the prince was shot to death by an arrow. An arrow from what the party believed was Wellington's men. But only after the battle was complete would Wellington's scout actually show up and witness the 4 standing next to a dead prince, causing Wellington to falsely believe that they played a part in the murder of the eldest son. At this point, they all came to the realization that Leonardo had been using them this entire time, and as soon as that last beacon would light up, he would get the first dibs on the fountain's powers, or so the theory goes. With that massive wall of misunderstandings out of the way, Wellington was now willing to assist them in any way he could to take down Leonardo da Vinci, the main way of assistance being one of his 3 wishes, his inexhaustible wealth, the other 2 being immortality and the sealing of the gods, of course. New checklist: number 1, find Finn. Number 2, help George Washington win the election. On the way to the capital, they stop by Stagfirth and pick up Jesus as well as Little Feather. Once the party arrived and set up a debate between them and Da Vinci, it hardly got started before Leo was stopped in his tracks by a question from Anthony. That question being the whereabouts of the crown princes. There was a long pause of silence before Leo announced Finn's location, revealing Sigmund Freud cradling the baby. That composure would not last though, as George Washington continued to sway the audience. Da Vinci soon became infuriated, exclaiming all of this was pointless, because as long as he had this, nobody could stop him. Once those words were said, the castle in the background began moving, transforming into a humanoid shape. Once the transformation was complete, Leonardo da Vinci ascended into one of the towers, and the war against the party began. A quite difficult battle was had, but the duo of Da Vinci and Freud was soon terminated, leaving the two dead and Baby Shark finally rescued. Listen, I could obviously keep going, but this is a perfect stopping point, I feel. This is like the end to what we could pretty much call the Da Vinci saga, from episode 1 to 27, all had to do with Da Vinci. So I think with that out of the way, this paves a good path for a possible part 2 to this series. Whenever that might culminate in something big, that's when I'll probably do the part 2 for this, which will probably be around when One Piece DnD's was, which was around episode 50. So we'll see about that. Also, just want to plug this here while I'm here, since you're here. I actually run Kazu5, which is a clipping channel I have for Rustage's D&D. So you have Isekai, One Piece, and One Piece Marines. All those I clip, and I try to upload at least one every day. So if you like those podcasts, then check those out as well. Because, hey, why not, right? Just remember the best moments from these streams. Anyway, thanks for joining me today, and I will see you later. Bye-bye. Oh, before I go, here's a special thanks to these individuals for informing me of my mistakes from the previous iteration of this video, which I took down within an hour. Thank you, Yojak. Thank you, Carter Kingdom. And thank you, Moxie, for commenting. Your comments are not gone. They are all right here at the end of this video. Thank you. And I will see everyone later. Bye-bye.